Excited to be here.
Super excited. Here on episode 34 of the Block to Block podcast, the best podcast in the world for all things Web3. Here we break down the technology, what's going on in the market, and the ways in which you can benefit. I am NFT and Jai, and my co-host Web3 Wayne is not here today, but we're still in for an action-packed podcast with the good brother Garrett Ransom. Super excited to have you on. So
Excited to be here.
yeah, I'm just gonna get this disclaimer out the way and just let you know that this podcast is for general informational purposes only. In no event will be liable for any loss or damage derived from the information provided. Please conduct your own due diligence and consult a financial advisor and or any other certified professional to help you manage your money. But with that, let's start the show. The good brother Garrett, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Great. I'm stoked. I'm stoked. I'm always excited when we have on guests for Block to Block.
Yeah.
Like typically each week we just like cover like the top major stories within the market, but it's always great to like kind of break that mode and like bring on a founder or somebody who has an extensive and interesting background, such as yourself. So very grateful to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. And I got to do you right. Every time we bring on somebody, we got to read out that bio of some of their accolades. So
Yeah.
for those who do not know, Mr. Garrett here is a Morehouse College graduate who is originally from the Bay Area. He's a self-taught programmer that's been working in Web3 since 2017. Garrett currently is working on a blockchain-based business line of credit protocol called Thurman that services Black-owned small businesses, and the vision of the company is to build the largest group economics platform on the blockchain. Fire. I'm not even going to say nothing for a second. We got to let that come in, man.
Hey, let us sit.
Let us sit.
Yeah.
Super excited, man. So, how about we just kick things off? And can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and like just some tidbits about your journey?
Yeah. So, I think we got into it at a high level. So I'm from the Bay Area, grew up out here and actually live in the Bay Area currently. East part of the Bay Area, suburb called Antioch, around 35, 40 minutes from Oakland. So I grew up out there, went to Morehouse College, and really kind of was on the path when I was at Morehouse to go work on Wall Street. I did a couple of summers in investment banking. And second summer, I kind of just knew I was sitting in New York City, high up in the Bank of America Tower. And I just knew like, I don't want to do this stuff, like full time. And I think that kind of just led to the shift of focusing on startups, entrepreneurship. And that's obviously like how we know each other. We both have gone through Venture for America. And yeah, I mean, from there, it's just pretty much been that path to working at small startups, usually probably between like, small as like 5 people, as big as maybe like 50 people. But really being on the ground and getting the chance to work closely with some pretty dope entrepreneurs, and then picked up things along the way. Like I taught myself how to code, all that type of stuff, and have just learned how to build products through trial and error. So I'm excited to be here, excited to chat it up, and we can get deeper into everything as we have this conversation.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. So a couple things I want to unpack. So you kind of start off with like more of that traditional corporate, for lack of a better term, career path, and then you realize you want to do something different. What was it about the startup ecosystem that really interested you?
Yeah, man. I think that what was really interesting was sort of being in a room of people who had an idea and they just went out and did it. So when I went through like Venture for America and kind of went through the training program and stuff like that, training camp, like it just was obvious that I was in a room of people who like had ideas and would act on them. And not to say that doesn't exist in the corporate world, but the structure to get things done is a lot different. There's maybe a lot more hoops that you have to jump through. So I was really attracted to just being in an area where, there were people who were willing to start somewhere, were willing to start at the bottom and then grow something from scratch, and having the confidence and resourcefulness to like make that happen. I think that was like the really cool thing that I saw coming into, working at startups, which made me want to, stay around.
Yeah. I mean, similar to you, I had a bit of that corporate experience as well, and
Yeah,
you know, you're right in terms. There's like a key difference in terms of the pace, right? When you
yeah,
like a larger organization,
mm,
there's a lot more systems, a lot more processes, a lot more stakeholders. So
yeah,
the decision making process and the ability to
yeah,
act on something may be a longer time frame. Whereas on the
exactly.
startup world, if it's just you and four other people, hey, do you think it's dope? You think it's dope? You think it's dope? All right,
Yep,
let's get to it. So
exactly.
yeah, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, man.
And so you're in the startup world and you
Hmm.
decided to teach yourself how to code. Like, can you
Hmm.
just tell us a little bit about like how that came about?
Yeah, so I mean, my first job was in Miami. I pretty much like my biggest task was like helping manage an accelerator. So, in Miami, I'm getting the chance to be around a lot of entrepreneurs and seeing people build out businesses. And one thing that bothered me coming from a business background is that if I had an idea, I would have to get somebody else to at least start and like make something, right?
Mm,
So I think it all kind of started from there, like just having the desire to say, I have an idea and I know enough about, computer science to get up an MVP, like an initial product, right?
right.
Um, so I mean, that was kind of the starting point and what really made me want to pick it up. But I I basically always tell this to anybody who, kind of like wants to get into coding. I took CS50 by Harvard.
Mm,
I just looked at the online class. They have a bunch of problem sets on there. I just kind of struggled my way through them and used the online community in order to kind of like pick things up. And then from there, it was just kind of networking and getting that first job to get like more mentorship and stuff like that. But it was really just that desire to like build things, like
yeah,
and not have to go to somebody else to do it. And then I just fell in love with, like building stuff.
that's dope. And
Yeah.
it's really helpful for your career as well, right? When you're able to, hey, we don't have to outsource this activity or like hire on somebody. Like you have that specific skill set to do it. And
Mhm.
you talked about finding the resources, having the tenacity to stick with it, finding that community. But you also got like different roles where you can get like more mentorship. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, so I mean, my first job was that was my first job. I guess technical role was when I was working at storage. So they're like a decentralized cloud storage company. It's like Airbnb, but for like cloud storage. So and they have their own ERC20 token called storage.
Mm,
Um, and that was my first technical role. I was on the data science and analytics team, and really, man, the first handful of months, I was just tapping on the team lead's shoulder for the team and just setting aside time to like talk through any problem that I had on a task that I had to do. If I was doing like extra coursework on the side, asking questions about that. There was even a guy who came on board who was recently finished a PhD, like was on the data science team with me, and like we would have weekly office hours where he'd teach me like linear algebra and we'd walk through
mhm.
like stats and stuff like that. So those people were really really helpful to me, in terms of like just building out my skills, also being comfortable with not knowing and just
Yeah.
realizing that like and having the confidence that if you ask the right people, you'll be able to figure it out over time.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, the experience that I had, at storage was definitely super super helpful to just building like a good test line across the board, not only just the data science team, but also asking different software engineers, like how parts of the product work that I was using to analyze data and help out the team.
Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really dope. That's really
yeah,
dope.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you're building out this technical skill set. You are working in like a Web3 company. Like, what even interested you to go that route? Because this was in 2017, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I think I read this one book and I can't remember the name of it, but it basically said, it's kind of trying to give you all the key, I guess, like key gems out of an MBA program, but in like a super small 100-page book. And
Okay.
one of the strategies that I got from the book was, hey, if you reach out to like around 20 companies, like 20 to 25 companies, and you don't even ask for a job, right? You just reach out to them and just kind of asked to have like conversations with somebody on the team that you have some commonalities with, and then at the end of the call, you ask for like, hey, do y'all have jobs, that you could end up getting a job over a period of time.
Mhm.
So I basically went through that, and I did that with around like 20 different companies in the Atlanta area, and also, a little bit further out, some things that would have been remote. And storage just kind of like one stood out just because I kind of was interested in like the whole idea of crowdsourced technology as
Right.
a whole. But yeah, it just seemed like a cool product, and it seemed like it was also growing and stuff like that. I knew some about crypto, but I didn't know that much.
Mhm.
Um, it just happened like started talking to people on the team, and it just was a fit. The job didn't come until maybe like 3-4 months after we started having conversations, maybe even longer. But those initial conversations grew into real relationships, real mentorship, and like something that paid my bills. So
Definitely.
yeah.
We got pause right there.
Yeah.
For those who are watching, make sure you're catching these gems. Gary just gave you the one of the blueprints on how you can like effectively network in an industry
Mm,
like Atlanta Row, right? I like that. Just going about trying to build those relationships because those when individual knows you very well,
yeah.
they see your passion, they can see a little bit about your skill set,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you're continuously building this relationship, like you said, like 3 to 4 months,
Yeah.
then they're in a position to like advocate for you and like, you know, help place you with an opportunity at their organization. So that was a
Exactly.
yeah.
And a point to that, like I guess, when I got the offer for the job, I never interviewed. And granted, this is different. It's like a smaller company. The company was around maybe like 12 to 15 people at the time. Like maybe three of us came on at the same time. It just was literally the head of the data science team who like he called me to their office. We hung out, we chatted, and he just offered me the job. Like there was no like, oh, get on the whiteboard. So that goes to say that, in general, people will, especially with smaller companies where it is kind of more referral based, if you build like true rapport with people, getting that opportunity and being top of mind, like you can get in the room.
Yeah,
So that's how it happened for me.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Cool. So, all right. So you're in Web3 at this point. You're learning, like you said before, you knew a little bit about Bitcoin, but not too much. Like,
yeah, yeah,
how was that journey in terms of like learning about everything regarding Web3? Because you was in
yeah, yeah,
2017 when it was just getting on the news, right?
yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it was like drinking from a fire hose, right? Because there are all these different components. Like one, you kind of like just security as a whole. Like that was my first time setting up a password manager and really thinking through like like handling different key management and stuff like that. Like obviously getting introduced to like crypto as a whole. Like one of the first assignments was kind of research before I came on was to read the Bitcoin white paper, and I
Mhm.
it was an uphill battle to understand that whole thing, all the way through, right? So it wasn't
Right.
an overnight process to sort of understand some of the underlying components of like security, decentralized technology, all these things. But the underlying foundations don't change. So if you bang your head on the wall enough times and you just kind of read and like do the work and also ask questions when you have questions, they come together. But it was also a really interesting time to come into Web3 in 2017 because that's when you started to see kind of the first examples of um, like NFTs. I remember like kitties came out and it kind of like
Mhm.
crashed Ethereum. Like, we're over here talking about it in the office. I'm over here talking to like one of our community members who had like a bunch of like rare Pepes and stuff. Like there were just like a bunch of
Yeah.
things. Like I got a unique opportunity to be in kind of that environment as it was sort of like an inflection point in Web3. And storage was also a company that had a very typical startup journey until they did an initial coin offering and raised $30 million and effectively had a completely different startup journey, right? So all those components made it a really really interesting time to kind of like be inside the beast and work at a place like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. For those who may not know, can you tell us a little bit like what is initial coin offering or ICO and like just what was it like being at storage during that time?
Yeah, yeah. So I came in like right after they did their initial coin offering.
Okay.
So yeah, basically, they raised that money in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then I came on board after that. But the high level of it is basically grouping together basically a community of people who believe in a protocol so much that they're willing to buy like a token, thinking that one, the token can be used for utility, like in the case of storage you can use it to actually use kind of the product service, using the storage token. But also it's just especially in that time and even still today, people will put money into cryptocurrencies hoping that the value of it goes up as the protocol grows and matures and there's more adoption, right? So pretty much it just was like a frenzy at that time. Like Filecoin raised like a ridiculous amount, like but at a high level, it's just giving away sort of to incentivize your community, within the utility of you also thinking about maybe the appreciation of token price over time.
Hmm. Fire, fire.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. So really, really dope background, right?
yeah,
Like just I'm just thinking about your journey and like how it's impacting you today. Going
mhm,
through this phase in which, you was you went from corporate to startups,
yeah,
right? Within startups, you realize, hey, having the ability to be a coder or a programmer or a developer is like really essential. Going through that educational journey,
yeah,
finding your way by building relationships and networking, getting into Web3, and just seeing like how the industry is evolving rapidly, right? Quite
yeah,
rapidly
yeah, super
with like the
rapidly. Yeah.
introductions of, because at first it was just crypto. Now we're seeing NFTs, we're
Hmm.
seeing ICO, so much activity going
Yeah,
on. And all within like relatively a short time span. Like, how were you like
yeah, yeah.
managing all these learnings and like how that impacted your development, would you say?
I mean, yeah, like I think like anything else, like I got that job kind of when I was in my early mid 20s, right? So like anything else, I mean, I'm just learning what it is to be an adult and all that type
Yeah.
of stuff. And but like anything else, I guess if you bang your head on the wall enough times, you start to learn. Don't learn every single thing, but you learn a lot. So I think that that was kind of always my perspective, like especially being, yes, starting out kind of like teaching myself how like that um, building a spirit of figuring shit out,
Mhm.
and that's kind of just kind of taking me through everything. Web3, there's a lot going on. I think you do have to have a focus. You can't probably get everything, but finding your pockets, gaining focus on kind of what part of crypto, blockchain technology, Web3, all this, that whatever buzzwords is super important. But then from there, it's just about putting in the work and being willing to ask questions and feel dumb when you don't know something, knowing that you will get smart if you ask the right people and read enough.
Cool. So I want to shift the conversation a bit
Yeah,
to what you're currently building, right?
yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit like what is Thurman Labs and
yeah,
what is it like? What's the vision and the
yeah,
inspiration behind it?
for sure. So when I was doing some like research, the whole like idea of incorporating blockchain technology in Black businesses, I just kind of had the idea of it. I read this report by JP Morgan where I realized that Black businesses will often make around $58,000 in year 5 of operations. Like that's a median revenue of a Black business. And business lines of credit have typically a $100,000 annual revenue requirement. So I just saw that there was like this gap that existed that made financial products that can help a Black business grow less accessible. So my thought was that blockchain technology is really good at creating like kind of crowdsourced communities around the value proposition. So Thurman, our value proposition is offering funding to small businesses, and we believe the core belief, blockchain technology, the ability to make voting super transparent, combining the voting and execution layer using things like DAOs, and also the idea of a lending pool where it's a community of people who pool together funds, and then individual borrowers who can borrow on the other side. I just thought that those components were really strong in terms of like being able to deliver that value proposition of you know, basically line of credit to a demographic of businesses that don't often get enough access to capital.
Yeah, like I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So you identified really a systemic issue, which
Hmm.
is, one of the number one reasons why businesses in general fail is
Yeah.
due to the lack of capital, right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing like how this is like these business line credit requirements of like 100,000 or more threshold is like systematically, you know, making it more inaccessible for Black
Yeah.
ventures to even get this capital. So I, I love that, and like how you talked about the technological components of why blockchain or Web3 is the approach to take in order to
Mm.
make this happen. Essentially, you're taking the principles of using technology in order to galvanize community in order
Hmm.
to ensure that we can all grow together, like in a really like communal aspect, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it, right? Yeah, like people in the lending pool, they get paid through interest, so they have like the chance to like directly gain the kind of financial upside of a business being stable enough to repay their debt, right? So that was really something important to me when I kind of was thinking through it, like how can I set up the incentives to where we can form a community of people who each are incentivized and each like get something out of that process, right? So yeah, man, that's exactly it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's one thing that makes it unique as well. It's not a really transactional factor. Like there's that community aspect that you're bringing
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a thought. Yeah, and I went to a DeFi summit out here in the Bay Area, and yeah, it kind of just gave me more insight to like, oh, this is how DeFi protocols are often used. And even going into kind of like reading research, you realize that like, say like an Aave or a compound, like a lot of the time that the end users don't usually end up being like real business owners over here, like grinding. Like a lot of times it's used by like speculators and like, developers who have talent in order to kind of like find good trades within the market. So really developing like real use cases for like real businesses, was super important to me thinking about like how crypto could be leveraged, bringing it, to the real world, like was one of the big, kind of core foundations of building a business.
Right, definitely. So I'm curious. Okay, so how was that process of like even building Thurman Labs, right? Like
Yeah.
so you identified the issue, you said,
Yeah.
okay, I want to build a platform that allows for Black-owned businesses to, gain access to capital, grow their ventures. Like, what was that process of like even starting?
From what perspective, like building the product or just like in general, like yeah, well,
Yeah, yeah, definitely from like building the product and
okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
getting that
yes.
community together.
Yeah, man. So I think for me it was looking at I did take some time before I started really working on Thurman, just picking up smart contract development. So I'd say that it goes back to, what I said before, just like figuring shit out along the way. It's like so I started out, like doing data science, more analytic stuff. Eventually, I picked up web development. Now I know how to write smart contracts, and I think it is kind of just you pick stuff up. And the really great thing about like that I love when I came into kind of the world of computer science. There's so many great code examples out there, and especially if you think about like the community of Web3 in particular, everything is so open source. Like you can see all the code of these smart contracts. Like you can look at Compound, and look how they built out their lending pool. You can do the same thing for Aave, for MakerDAO, like all these large protocols. The code bases are there, right? So for me, it was having a good diet, right? Having a good diet of code that I knew was being used by a lot of people, and then thinking about how I need to augment it to one, be able to launch quick, knowing that I'm one person and I don't have a huge team like these other protocols do. But two, yeah, it's just yeah, thinking about how do I get to market in a timely manner, man. So I mean, yeah, from that perspective, it was just picking up the right skills and using good examples of other protocols and just modifying it to fit, what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, I love that, and that's definitely a gem right there for anyone who's building a business or a project or anything really.
No,
Like, you don't have to recreate the wheel, right?
exactly, 100%.
There's so many examples out there of like different organizations, different structures, different examples in which you can use as a reference point as you build
Hmm.
out your foundation. Now, the key is, add your own little secret sauce to
Yeah,
differentiate yourself from the others, but you don't have to figure out every single thing from
yeah,
scratch. Like,
yeah.
it's about
And
being more efficient.
exactly. And none of these companies, like, dude, like, they might have different names for things. They might do things in a slightly different way, but all these protocols in DeFi generally have all the same components. So there has become a standard way to do things, and that exists across like pretty much most product categories. So yeah, you just remix it to make it your own, because you're solving a unique problem, but yeah, it's always great to use the research of other people to lean on and to not force yourself to learn lessons that have already been learned by other people.
Right. A quote I
Yeah.
heard was, a smart person learns from the mistakes, but a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. So,
Yep, yep, 100%. Yeah, real talk.
yeah. Okay. Dope, dope, dope. All right. So, you're in the process. You're learning from like different resources and venues. You're building Thurman Labs. How do you go about making those relationships with the business owners, right? Because as a business owner,
Yeah,
everything's at stake here, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Trying to support your employees. You're trying to put out your product or your service out there, and then Web3 sounds cool, but then if
yeah,
you're not someone who's super familiar and you're looking at
yeah,
the news, you're like, oh, is this crypto and NFT stuff a scam? Like, what's going on? So
yeah.
how do you go about like really building that rapport and convincing entrepreneurs that Thurman is a trusted platform to use?
Yeah, I mean, granted, like, you build credibility over time. So the credibility I have now, my hope and expectation is that I'll have more credibility, say, a year from now, right?
Right.
With that being said, one thing I did before I started writing code was I had conversations with business owners and just try to understand what their needs were, how they had approached, funding their operations, um, you know, historically, and just thinking about like what resources that they needed just as business owners in general. Um, I didn't feel like some feeling of, oh, people will reject money just because it's coming in crypto. My whole idea is that I expect business owners to use the money in USD at the end of it, right? It's just a transparent kind of like a transaction layer where people are getting USDC and then they're converting into USD to use for the business. Um, but yeah, one thing that I think that I've been lucky to have is I've been a part of organizations like Google for Startups, Atlanta Founders Academy, and Goody Nation's Intentionally Good Project, where like I've been around like some dope Black small business owners. So I know that I am able to lean on that, thinking about kind of the initial customers. And I've also just reached out, kind of like cold called, people for like Black Chamber of Commerce, like especially out here in the Bay Area. But yeah, with that being said, man, like anything else, like there's going to be, you don't need everybody to say yes. You just need enough people to say yes. And that's sort of how my approach has been, but really trying to understand why, what fuels a business and like why they would use this as opposed to other products has been important for me to figure out through calls and stuff.
Man, another gem, man. I'm telling you guys, Garrett is dropping all the gems.
Right.
Real quick, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and you share this out to anybody who needs to hear this. Because you just dropped a major thing. Within like the venture world, they call it customer discovery.
Hmm.
Other people may call it different things, but knowing your customer's pain point is
No.
truly the way to like go about building whatever it is that you're trying to build, right?
Yeah, yeah, it helps. Yeah, they'll let you
Because
know.
right, because you're gonna have your own assumptions, and they'll
Hmm.
may give you some kind of feedback that you're like, oh, I didn't even think about this before. Let me integrate that into my solution, and now I can make an even better value proposition.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man, I love it. I love it. All right, so you're in the process, you're building, you're getting, people familiar with like Thurman Labs, and you're trying to, start the whole process
Yeah,
for the business owner who is interested and wants to receive funding from you. Like, what are like the requirements, right? Are there specific types of businesses that you're looking at?
yeah,
General thresholds that we should be aware of?
yeah, for sure. I will say that I've intentionally focused more on getting sort of like the lending pool and like the funds for business owners, uh, and building out that community side first of like people who are, put their money down. But with that being said, the criteria will revolve around a core set of things, right? So whether the business itself kind of put up some type of money into our lending pool, put up some amount of collateral themselves, what their current debt load is, what their current revenue is, being able to kind of see what industry they're in and kind of what the how their industry works and sort of what the expectation is for a good business within that space. Yeah, and a kind of load of other things. But it will be like an iterative process where not only are we thinking about kind of creating great standards, but also thinking about like how we can leverage the brain power within the community to where it's not just this rigid process, but it's also thinking about like the feedback that the community gives and how we can use a community of financially incentivized people to make good investment decisions, but also like wholesome like investment decisions that are based on the quantitative and qualitative stuff.
I like that. And by doing so it sounds like you're not taking that cookie cutter approach of, hey, make sure you make X amount of revenue.
Yeah,
And
I mean we're making like a lower revenue requirement by nature. Obviously, um, I'm having conversations with people are who have experience with debt underwriting to
mm,
figure out like a great process. And you don't want to, I guess, put businesses in a position where they just will fail. So there
right.
has to be certain things in place where it's like, all right, you can only borrow 1/5 of your, whatever your revenue is or whatever that number is. You figure out what those numbers are. You try to stay as closely to those things. Um, so you have a core set of standards to kind of like lead people to success. But at the same time, I do feel there has to be some responsibility to truly make the line of credit more accessible. So
Mhm.
it is that balance, which will continue to get developed over time as we lend to more businesses.
Right. And that's very important, especially when we talk about the concept of leverage, right?
Yeah,
As a business, you never want to be over leveraged where your
yeah,
debt is a lot more than the money that's coming in.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's also very vital, and I'm glad you emphasized it a few different times, just building those really good standards. Because
Mm,
as we've seen within the
yeah,
financial markets,
yep,
a lot of banks are closing down, and they're
yeah,
because they didn't have necessarily the right standards when they
yeah,
lend their money to like whoever they lended their money to, right? So
yeah.
okay, okay, I'm excited. Sure, I might apply. Give me a bag myself.
Hey, hey, slide through.
So actually, speaking about just like what's going on in like the overall macro economy, right? Like
Yeah,
we've seen like the last couple of months, like these large banks like SVB
mm,
and like Credit Suisse and all them kind of implode. And these
yeah,
were like banks that were like, for the most part, in more riskier asset classes with like high tech startups and
yeah,
venture and what have you. Just like what going back to what we said about like learning from the mistakes of others and like seeing what's
yeah.
going on, like how has what's been occurring kind of framed how you're thinking about like Thurman and like the way you're going to make your standards and all of that.
Yeah, I think when you build a business, there are like a zillion different risks, right?
Hmm.
And I think that there are risks that you immediately attack and you like have a complete answer to. There's some risks that you have complete control over, and there are other risks that you have no control over, right? So with that being said, I guess like my approach has been thinking about like how can I take the risk vectors that s- you know could have the biggest impact on my business, and try to either be extremely aware of them or just like mitigate it as much as possible, have some baseline solution to it. Um, but there's some things that you cannot control, and I don't try to control those things. um I guess that's kind of how I frame all of it. I did a good amount of research on kind of like the SVB thing, just because um USDC had been affected by it because their reserves were in like SVB, and that caused like the USDC's value to like go to around like 88 cents. Luckily it went back because government stepped in and all that type of stuff. But yeah, you just try to be aware and stay on top of those things as they pop up, realizing that you might not know well in advance these things are going to happen. You just do the best you can to kind of just mitigate risk, man.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and that's really all that we can do, right?
Yeah,
Focus on
yeah, yeah.
things that you can control.
There's a zillion ways for a business to fail outside of like big market kind of like
Exactly.
like factors, right? So yeah, control what you can control, right?
Absolutely. And you can also look at it as really a great opportunity, because they often said the best times to build your business is when things are looking bad and it's recessionary and things
Mm,
are like falling apart. It seems like the world is ended.
yeah,
Because one, you're learning from the mistakes of, okay, this is how we got here. So I'm gonna not do any of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you're able to like really build something that's impactful to communities during times of struggle, when times are good, you're off to the
Oh
moon.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think yeah, when markets are down, it cuts the fluff, right? So I mean, obviously the conditions are harder. It's dope when it's easier to raise money or do like gain access to capital. But when those things aren't in place, just because the markets might just be whatever, a little bit more cautious or down, et cetera. Like you just got to focus on the meat and potatoes and cut the fluff. And I think that's why some great businesses come out of these periods of time. But like I said, there's a zillion ways to size, market conditions. So, you got to fix those things too. Focus on the meat and potatoes. That's all you can do. Yeah,
I love it. That's probably the quote of this episode. Focus on the meat and potatoes.
yeah, focus on the meat and potatoes, bro, for sure.
Shoot,
Yeah.
you should put that on the t-shirt, man.
Hey, man, might have to.
Cool. So, are there like specific locations, like states, where Thurman is trying to focus in on, or is it like it doesn't matter if you're in like Alaska or
Yeah.
Florida?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is to create like, the vision, thinking like whatever, you know, at a high level is envision creating Thurman to be sort of this global thing. And I think
Yeah.
that like blockchain technology by nature is global. So obviously certain things are easier to kind of like do um, from just a local perspective. It's easier to market in a local market as opposed to say, oh, I'm going to put this money here, this XYZ resources here. So I definitely get why people focus on these net. To start out with, like it will be people in my network, and then from there you start to kind of like market to where you can get some more inbound and have other businesses kind of come in and apply, and sort of kind of grow from there. But there's no at this point like specific, I guess like geographic region where we're just saying like we're only investing in businesses
Right.
here.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
shoot, I'm in your network, so like I said, I'm a
Hey, you here, bro? I mean, y'all on some high tech stuff, but hey, maybe there's some
maybe there's
niche,
some synergy there. We can talk
yeah,
offline.
maybe there's some synergy, yeah.
Oh man, I love it. So, anything you're super excited for within like the next 12 months for Thurman?
Dude, I'm just excited to like really be in a spot to lend to businesses, man, like and make real impact, right? Like, so I've been on the phone with a couple people who've, been early users, early funders of the protocol who like are also business, so want to lend to. I mean, granted, it's not just my vote, it's the community's vote, but
Mm,
having those conversations where on the financial commitment, but they're also saying like, hey, Garrett, as you walk through this presentation and talk about there's this entrepreneur that I mentioned in my pitch named Claire, like when you mentioned Claire's problem, that's exactly what I'm dealing with right now. So when I have those conversations like that, I want to fill that gap. I really want to be able to like, deliver on that value proposition. Now we're at a point where we're starting to get, like thousands of dollars coming in from, like a small group of, community. Be great to sort of like be able to grow that, get to a point where we're lending, as soon as possible, and then get to the point where like we're really delivering on that value proposition of like, yo, I was somebody who put, $50 down, $1,000, $5,000 down, and I saw my money grow, and my money grew because I invested in a Black small business that I support.
Yeah.
So I'm just excited for that, from kind of that sentimental perspective, also the credibility perspective, knowing that like, that'll make it even easier to get more people on board once you kind of have those first case studies showcasing the success. Yeah, man. So I'm just excited to just grow on the foundation of what I'm building, and kind of just taking one step at a time, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And and that's what it's all about, right? Making that impact on
yeah,
communities. Because going back at all right, we talked about on the large scale, you know,
yeah,
unfortunately, many Black businesses are unable to like get these lines
yeah,
of funding in order to grow their venture. So just think about like the mom and pop shop on like the corner store that
yeah,
you grew up seeing, like the fact like they're making some kind of impact in your community
yeah,
neighborhood and they can't get the financing that they need,
yeah.
right? This can drastically transform lives and communities altogether. So it's
That's
very
a thought, man. Yeah.
it's very powerful stuff here, man.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah,
Great. So okay, so you're at the point you're building, you got some beta users, you have the community, you got the money coming in, and right now it's just about like getting into like a mass market. Any any things that you're learning along the way that's like helping you say, okay, I tried this may have not have worked, so let me like try using this strategy. And like, are you like going through that transitional period in which you're just trying things and you're learning and like how?
yeah, yeah, man. Yes, always, right? Like, so, granted, I launched Thurman on March 22nd, right? And I started hopping on the phone maybe a couple of days after. So I can't say that I have like some long extended period of time where the
Right.
product's been out. We haven't lent to a business yet. We have gotten to the point where, like I've been on these calls, have had financial commitments. I've helped, probably like out of half the people or more, these are people who, you know, owned a MetaMask wallet, maybe never owned like a crypto wallet. This is kind of their first kind of crypto investment, first like investment in DeFi, right? So through having those conversations, through like sitting on those onboarding calls and helping them get some USDC and ETH, uh, helping them interact with like the web app that that's been built, you do start to pick some things up, or even through pitch conversations where I basically tell people while I'm on the call, hey, interrupt me when whenever something doesn't make sense. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I know that uh, doing that will allow me to figure out what things need to be perfected about how I'm talking to people about the
Right.
product. Right. So I think those have probably been the key areas. Just kind of like understanding, trying to listen and empathize, like as I'm having these conversations with these like kind of initial funders, just keeping a guy out. But over the coming months, building out that actual like real community process, like that process to like use the community voting process to actually lend to a business. um, I think that will bring a lot of lessons, and I'm excited for those lessons, like figuring out kind of how do you balance the idea that, hey, we want to have everybody have power, we want everybody to be able to vote, to like, hey, dude, I got a 9 to 5, I got a kid, all I really can commit to like this community is 2 to 5 hours per week. So how do you get that balance of like having this community governed like financial product, um, and knowing that you got to get from point A to point B, and thinking about some of the constraints within your user base, and knowing you still got to get from point A to point B, man. So I'm excited for those lessons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. And also, just to go back a little bit, because
yeah,
I feel like I kind of skipped over this and
yeah.
it's super important. You really had to like become a great fundraiser in order to even do what you're doing, right? And
Mm,
that's a critical skill for any business owner. Knowing how to
mm,
tell a compelling enough story to where people will believe in your vision and back it up with
yeah,
like money. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
just want to like highlight that. Like that's a gem as well, like to take away from this episode.
A little bit, man. Yeah, like I think I would not consider myself an expert at fundraising by any means, but I will say that through my experience, I've done a little bit of sales. I've had another startup that I worked on. Like, you just get comfortable doing outreach, and yeah, you just try to get better and better at the outreach part, get the numbers right to get the outcome you want. Like,
Yeah.
on average, if I reach out to 10 of my close friends, how many of those friends are likely going to be able to give me money? All right, now that I'm outside of my close friends, if I reach out to just people I'm kind of cool with, what percentage of those people do I need to have conversations with, knowing that the conversion rate is going to be lower on those conversations because they don't know me as well. How do I need to pitch to somebody who can give $250 to $1,000 versus somebody who can write a $5,000 check? What are the different mindsets between those people? And then kind of learning along the way. Just through the numbers game, man. So
Yeah, absolutely. So we just got a few more questions and then we'll wrap it up because I know you're out here,
yeah,
you know,
hey, bro. Yeah,
changing
yeah.
lives.
Oh man, you doing the
Crowdfunding.
same, man. Just happy to be here. Dog.
Okay. So let's say
Yeah,
I'm watching this episode right now, and
yeah,
either myself or a close friend or family member is a business owner who can use your service. What's the best way to get in
yeah.
contact with you?
Yeah, I would say that hit me up directly at Garrett Garrett at Thurman Thurman.io. Like, reach out to me on there. We can set up a conversation, and I'd love to learn more about business, what you have going on, what your goals are. We're definitely in a space right now where we're very, very early on and want to have real conversations with people and go from there. So that's the best way to contact me and reach me.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. Definitely reach out to Garrett. We'll definitely put his contact information within the description below, and yeah, have those critical conversations because you know you're helping contributing to Thurman become an even bigger venture that's able to have
Mm,
a wider net, right, with just your contributions.
yeah, hey, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. So, any final piece of advice that you would like to give someone who's interested in Web3 or even building a tech venture in general? Like,
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So I guess I'll answer both. If you're interested in Web3 in general, I think that there are a lot of events constantly going on. There's Twitter. There is there are discords. There are a lot of ways to like build relationships in those spaces, in the space. So I think being proactive and just doing the outreach, doing the work, hopping on the phone, will always lead to the best result. Um, so I say, yeah, just put yourself out there. Put yourself out there, know what your goal is at the end of the day, and yeah, just put yourself in the right rooms necessary to do it. I always recommend to people, if you reach out to 20 people on the phone, something good will come out of it, right? So that's sort of I guess the Web3 thing. And yeah, of course, learn whatever skills you need to along the way too. um but on the company side, man, like, uh I would say just don't lie to yourself. And I was talking to a friend about that, and like the reason why I said don't lie to yourself, it's something that I've done in the past, and I think a lot of us do. Um, at each step of the process, one, we all have our own blind spots. One, we have things that we naturally like doing. Um, Me, I might not like. I'll hop on the phone and I'll chop it up with people, but I really do like just kind of sitting down and just cranking out work. But I'm lying to myself if I don't realize that the best use of my time, if I think about my core metric, of success, which is lending to businesses, we take a transaction fee and that's revenue for the company. I'm lying to myself if I say that probably if I said that the most important thing is not hopping on as many phone calls with people around me, people in my network, their friends of friends and stuff like that, to ask for money. Like I'm lying to myself. So I say that it's something that we naturally will do, would naturally kind of want to do the things that we think are cool or fun or just feel more comfortable to us. But tell the truth and just do the work that you feel like you should be doing at that moment in time, and also lean on great resources that are all across the web on people who've built before, and kind of use their framework as a way to give you a bit more insight and help you develop your kind of instincts in terms of what are the best tasks to be working on at each stage of your business.
I love that advice. Don't lie to yourself. So I'm
Yeah.
currently reading, one of the books I'm reading right now is the Harvard Business Review top 10 book on leadership.
Hmm.
And literally in the first chapter, they talk about how effective leaders have like things like emotional intelligence skills, like empathy and things of that nature. But one of it is like self-awareness,
Hmm.
knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and not lying to yourself. Like it literally
Hmm.
says that like you're honest, because when you're not lying to yourself, you recognize, okay, these are the areas in which I can crush it in. These are the
Hmm.
areas in which I'll need a team member. You're
Yep.
not setting yourself up for failure at all. You're always going to set yourself up for success if
Yeah.
you are super self-aware,
Yeah.
super truthful and critical of yourself in a positive and constructive manner.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
And
Of course.
just set yourself up for success and like work with the team.
Exactly, man. You got to keep it real. I think that's a big thing.
Keep it
If
real,
you're
man.
always search for the truth. If you're searching for the truth, you're not lying to yourself, man. Like you set yourself in a better position, right? So I mean, yeah, Harvard Business Review said it. So I mean, dude, hey, it's there. It's the truth.
Most definitely, man.
Yeah.
Man, appreciate your time. Super impactful. Like almost an hour worth of just gems, and
Yeah.
really excited to see how Thurman Labs evolves within the next year. So if you are a
Appreciate it.
business owner or you know somebody who can benefit from gaining more access to capital, definitely hit up Garrett. Description, his information will be in the description below. Once again, appreciate you for blessing us
Appreciate
here
you.
on
Yeah.
episode 34.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for setting it up.
Most definitely. Most definitely. All right, y'all. You know what to do. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share out with all your loved ones. And this is NFT and Jai. Appreciate you. Much love. Peace.